All right. Welcome back to Breaking the Law. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Our purpose is simple. The traditional approach to law is breaking people because the law is broken, and so it's time to break the law. Today, we're taking a deeper dive into how the law is breaking people. We're really pleased to be joined by two very distinguished guests today. This is also our first international episode, so very excited about that.
That's right.
Our first guest is Janet Thompson Jackson. Janet is a proud graduate of Howard University School of Law in Washington, D.C. She practiced law in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. before directing a nonprofit organization that provided transitional housing, case management, and job training and placement services to homeless and at-risk families. Janet works, teaches, and speaks internationally. She has taught law for over 20 years, including at my alma mater, Washburn Law, and currently serves as Wellbeing, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer for the University of, I'm going to mess this up, Groningen. Did I say that even close to right?
Perfect.
Awesome. Faculty of Law in the Netherlands. She is also the founder of Well Law, a program designed to help law students and lawyers develop tools to manage the stresses inherent in law school and law practice and to thrive. Janet believes that wellness and justice are intertwined, and as a voice for wellness for voice for wellness as justice. Janet, welcome to the show. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. No, that was plenty. Thank you very much, and it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for joining us. Danielle Hall, thank you so much for being here. Danielle has served as the Executive Director for the Kansas Lawyers Assistance Program since December 2019. In addition to overseeing the daily operations, she administers a variety of programs for lawyers and law students who need assistance due to a substance use, mental health, or law practice management related issue. She currently serves as the Policy Chair for the Institute for Wellbeing and Law and serves on the Executive Committee of the Kansas Lawyer Wellbeing Task Force. She is also an active member in the ABA Law Practice Division, having served on several committees, and is a regular contributor to the ABA Law Practice magazine. Welcome, Danielle. Thank you for joining us. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here with you today and looking forward to our discussion that we're about to have.
Yeah, well, we're really excited for it as well. And Ashlyn, our co-host?
Yes. Hi. Hello. My name is Ashlyn Lindskog. I am so stoked to be here and chat with all of you. I am an attorney. I have been practicing since 2015 and am a lifelong learner and just trying to be adaptive in this crazy world that all of these unprecedented times that we keep experiencing. So I think these conversations are so relevant, and I'm just excited to participate in them.
And I'm Sam Foreman. I'm a lawyer. I do law stuff and learning to try to be a better human being along the way. So, well, our topic today is on how the law is breaking people. And as we've talked about in our first episode, when we're talking about the law, we're talking about the law industry, and often in particular, how the traditional approach to law is breaking people. And when we're talking about traditional law, we're talking about the model that has largely been used and has experienced very few changes really over the last 100 years or so. Very tight hierarchical cultures, lots of internal politics, lots of barriers to advancement and other items like that. And we'll go into that in more detail as we get into today's episode. But I wanted to start by sharing a little bit from a piece that I found on Above the Law, and it talks about a sabbatical program that a big law firm has used, and I believe they adopted it in about 2018, 2019, so they've been using it for a couple of years, and this article was from 2020, and I just want to read this quote that just really grabbed me, and then a little bit more of the background on it, and kind of use that to kind of set up our conversation for today. And this is from a partner at this law firm. The quote is, "It's the most amazing and underrated perk to be able to do things like that instead of waiting until you retire." And that quote was in response to kind of commenting on the wonderful things that he was able to do during his 3-month sabbatical from the firm, like taking his teenage daughter to the movies at noon, and being able to take an extended trip internationally. And so I really struggled with, okay, is this type of a program a sign of progress in the law, or is this really a sign of how it's breaking people? And I ended up kind of going towards the former, because I think as I look at this, I see a lot of problems. I'm just really curious what everyone else's reactions to it are, and what this type of reaction that he had to being able to do normal things, and the context in which it was delivered of, hey, now here I'm taking this, extended absence from my work, that then allows me to be able to do these normal people things. And that being something that's celebrated. What does that say about kind of the mindset and the position that, the traditional approach to law has put so many people in? And I'm curious for everyone else's thoughts. I have lots of thoughts, but I talk too much, as we've already established. So,
my initial impression is it's kind of a gut check for me, as someone with young children who has had, at least historically, to make choices when I feel like I'm in a position to choose priorities or to make choices. But I'm with you. I think it does show progress, and the need to recognize that we need to experience our lives, not just survive them, even as lawyers, even as other people rely on us. But I also think it still makes me feel a little sad that it felt like someone had to be granted permission to take his high school daughter to a movie at noon, and that we had to create this whole, complex leave system so someone felt like that was something they could experience. That kind of makes me a little sad that that is truly a reality for people.
Danielle, I'm curious your thoughts on this type of a program and what it says about where the legal industry is and where it's going.
Right. I have mixed feelings about it, I think. On one end, it serves somewhat as a positive, because you see a firm instituting a policy that is different, that allows somebody to take an extended leave period and creates an environment where that is okay to do. But at the same time, I get what both of you are saying with, the opposite effect of this is that this also implies that we need these extended periods of time. And so what's creating the situation and circumstances to where, in order to get rest, relaxation, do normal things that I think others do, what's leading to that point in order to get us to a specific place where we say, okay, I don't need just a day here or a day there, but I need an extended leave at this time to just do normal things that one would do.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Janet? What thoughts do you have to add?
Yeah, I think that on the positive side, it really shows us that there's a growing awareness that there is a need to change things. And it also shows an effort to change things. We're going to try to do something. I think that the something isn't necessarily the fix. Because my guess is that this person is going to go back to work and be completely, feel like they're on a treadmill again, feel like they, those 3 months have disappeared into my memory because, and I don't know when I'm going to get those again. And so if we give this time, but we don't change the system, then it's kind of putting a Band-Aid on this big wound. And I think that what we need to do is to really look at, as you said, Sam, earlier, how the legal profession and the practice of law is structured. How are we doing this, and why are we doing it this way, other than we've always done it this way? Right. And how can we integrate some well-being, how can we integrate some well-being support into the system itself?
Yeah, no, I think that those are excellent thoughts. This particular sabbatical program, and this was another thing that struck me, was designed to become available to attorneys after they'd spent at least 7 years at that firm, and then to become available on 6-year increments. afterwards, which I think to, your observations about this is a positive that people are aware of the need and that they're taking action. I think that to me speaks volumes. I think questions that I have viewing it in this context of here's something that to me seems like a really extreme sort of step of, hey, we're going to either force you to take 3 months off, or we're going to, make it available for you to take this 3-month period off. To me seems like something that acknowledges the severity of the circumstances in which attorneys are finding themselves, to where this feels like, hey, this is what we need for people to start doing. But it also raises questions for me of like, this is happening at firms that have PTO policies, who have the ability for attorneys to take time off. What is happening in the process that people are either taking time off or not taking time off, being pressured not to take time off, or taking the token, I'm out of the office, but I'm really available for whatever, whenever, any hour of the day, to the point where this is part of the solution for wellness, is that's not working. And so we need something else. And I'm curious, and I don't have any other insight into this firm other than this very short piece. And I have not picked on them by name on purpose because I don't want to be rude. Although I would. I'll link the article, and that will probably be enough.
Something that strikes me that you said that I think is so important too, maybe this is in other industries, this happens to be the only one I've ever spent a significant professional amount of time in, but you could have an unlimited, especially as a lawyer who's under a billable hour model, in a production-based model, you could give me all of the available PTO in the world and make it completely available to me. But when my income is measured by production, I could take a week off, but only so that I can pack another week full to make up the difference. There is no bank of billable PTO hours that I can fill a gap with to say, okay, next week I'm going to go to Florida with my family, but don't worry, this isn't going to mess with my production because we have this pool of billable hours I can borrow. I mean, so the PTO, is kind of theoretical, I think, for lawyers who are at least being measured on a billable hour model or a production-based model like that, because I know in my mind when I was under a model like that, I thought, well, if I take today off, if I'm not feeling well and I take today off, I have to work Saturday, or I have to make it up next month because my hours will dip. And if my hours dip, then I'm never going to catch up. And if I don't catch up, then I'm not going to be up for partner. And it just spirals. And so I just think it's, saying we have unlimited PTO. Well, that's neat, but I don't know as effective as they think it is, or maybe it's exactly as effective as they want it to be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think on top of that, on top of the billable hour, with the way the practice of law is structured generally, I mean, you take into account things like deadlines, court systems, motions practice. That also contributes to this feeling of I can't take leave or I can't take time off. Yeah. Sometimes we talk about teenagers and they have this FOMO, the fear of missing out, but I feel like the same is applicable to lawyers. We have that fear of missing out on something within our email inbox, or we have the fear of missing out that if I'm not here, then am I going to be considered the next time the go around is for considering partnership? And so I think the way that it is structured, it lends itself to that fear of, I just don't have the ability to take the leave time as a result.
And I think in addition to all of the things that Danielle just mentioned, there also is the perception, and I want to call it the perception because I don't think that it's always true, the perception that the client wants us to be available, wants the lawyer to be available all the time. And I actually don't think that I'm sure for some clients it's true. I don't think that it's always true. Because I think that some of these clients are taking time and living their lives. And I do think that there's pressure there, but I think that we also need to go back and re-examine some of the reasons, some of the rationale that we're using for creating these structures. And, is it really true? Is it necessary? And if it was true 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, is it true today? Because companies now who are, especially since the pandemic, companies are doing things differently. I mean, I just read multiple articles about major companies who are now embracing the, remote work. when CEOs who said, I'll never let my employees work remotely. And then the pandemic hit and they realized, oh, okay, we were more productive or we didn't lose productivity. And so it's okay. And so now people in other industries, might have a little bit more balance. And actually some law firms are doing this too. So there are some law firms who are really trying to respond to this. But I think that we have to challenge some of the assumptions and rationales that we have, or not we, I should say, that the profession is using to keep this structure that really is breaking people down.
Totally.
No, I think that's so well put, and I think it's such a great example of just kind of tying all these concepts together. You've got the incentive structure in law firms that drives people's fear of missing out on things, that then is compounded or fueled by people's perceptions about what clients want or what their partners want or what those expectations are. And those are often, never pushed back on, never, challenged or never really properly understood. And so there's all of these factors that are at play. And I think where we, really, really badly get adrift as an industry is we've taken, our entire business model and we've built it based on the currency of time. And so we're constantly trying to cash out on our time. And as a result, have very little margin for anything else because time is the only thing that we've chosen to sell. And so to maximize our productivity and our profitability, we must sell as much time as possible, leaving very little of that resource and our attention that goes along with it to thinking about, are we even selling something that people want to buy? That constant availability, that addiction to being, on alert at all times, to avoid missing out on something, which for the record, I have never done more than a lot. But that strikes me a lot of that we're not making enough time to really figure out how to just constantly figure out how to do it better, which so many other industries, they're always doing that. But it seems like the law frequently is not.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you had something to say.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Nope, nothing to add.
Well, I don't have anything else to say. I'm out of ideas.
I thought your ideas were good for what it's worth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are we here?
Yep. I think on this next piece. Right
Okay.
Here. Yep.
So one of the things when we talk about that the law is breaking people, it's important, and we kind of touched on this in the intro episode, but who when we talk about the law is breaking people, who are we talking about? And first, and probably most obviously, is that it's breaking attorneys who are practicing law. There are some burnout statistics that I think are so interesting. And, I've heard the word burnout used more recently than I probably ever had before. And it's probably based on a lot of things. But these statistics say 2/3 of legal professionals have experienced burnout. And the World Health Organization defines burnout as a syndrome resulting from stress in the workplace that hasn't been managed successfully. They further classified burnout into 3 dimensions: exhaustion or depleted energy, general negativism on one's occupation, and professional efficiency is reduced. So 3 kind of different dimensions that people may experience when they're experiencing burnout. In 2021, according to Bloomberg Law, over 50% of attorneys surveyed reported feeling burned out. That's a significant number.
I think it's
lawyers. Low. You think they're unreporting? They're underreporting?
I think lawyers lie to make ourselves look and feel better sometimes.
We are not burnout. We love it. We are
Yes.
having so much fun with all the working we're doing. Symptoms include persistent exhaustion, decreased performance, detachment, reduced motivation, emotional roller coasters. Physical symptoms can be, headaches, insomnia, forgetfulness, lack of satisfaction, those types of things, which I think can it's like cyclical, right? You're experiencing burnout. And so you're having trouble at work being motivated, and you're struggling in all these different ways, which reduces productivity significantly. And so then you're stressed because you can't get anything done. And man, it's a cycle that is scary. And so, before I move on, there are other areas in which I think that the law is certainly breaking lawyers. But what do you guys think? What are you seeing both in what you do and in your experiences as it relates to lawyer burnout?
I'll let Danielle start with that, because I know she's deep into that right now.
Yeah. Talk to us, Danielle.
I'll say that from the perspective of lawyers assistance programs, and I can speak sort of nationally, that the trends as far as those seeking assistance for burnout, is recognized. We've heard that term probably more than we have in previous years. And I think lawyers are starting to connect with what it is versus what it is that they're actually experiencing, and recognizing that they're needing assistance in this area. So that's one of the areas just nationally we have seen a huge increase of the lawyer population seeking assistance for those types of services, with the traditional laps that are sometimes we get put in those categories of only servicing substance use disorder. But on the other hand, we service a lot of different mental health conditions, including burnout. But I think in addition, to burnout, we're seeing kind of those things that get connected to burnout that if we don't take care of it, that eventually lead to things like anxiety and depression, and maybe even that substance use disorder. So I can attest to what we see here in Kansas and what we've seen nationally is this, we have a large population of burned out lawyers.
And I would add to that, that we have to look beyond the lawyers. What we're finding is that legal staff are burned out. And I would say, we have to go back to law school, because what we're seeing in the legal profession, once you start practicing, starts in law school. And we have the statistics on that. And so unfortunately, it actually used to be until now that we have new data after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, in 2019 statistics told us that law students came into law school as with the general psychological profile as the rest of the public, and like lower than 10% experiencing depression. By the time they got out of law school, it was up to 40%. And so something was happening in those law school years. And I say was because it's still happening, but what we're finding now, post-pandemic, is that students are coming in with a higher rate of anxiety and depression coming into law school, but it's still increasing in law school. And that trajectory continues at least for the first 10 years of practice.
Wow.
And so what we're seeing in the profession starts in law school. And it's not just the law students. The law students are absolutely experiencing this, but it affects the entire environment. And so law professors, staff, everyone is stressed. And that creates this container of stress that we're walking around in. And one of the problems is that it becomes our normal. And so we think it's actually normal to live with this level of stress and to go into a workplace where we're filled with all this tension and stress and anxiety, and we're in this fight, flight, or freeze mode all the time. It becomes normal when it's not. Not only is it not normal, Danielle talked about what it can lead to beyond all of those things, to actual physical ailments, heart attacks, and all sorts of chronic conditions. And one thing I want to mention about burnout, and we are hearing that word a lot, it is actually a term that is used in Europe a lot. I'm in Europe right now. And in the Netherlands, burnout is a medical diagnosis that mandates an employer to give time off, paid time off, and to make sure that the person has the appropriate medical or mental health care, medical including mental health care that is needed. Now, we still need to do a lot with burnout prevention, preventing getting to that point. But I think it's huge that it's recognized as something that the person needs time to heal. And generally speaking, when people come back to work, they come back staggered. They don't come back full on 40, right. 60, however many hours you were working before. You stagger it so that you are building up your resilience again. Mm-hmm. So there are things like that there are models for how we can incorporate things into the system, but there's so much to tackle. We have such a long way to go.
Yeah. I'm curious, when, in your experience, when we're using a medical diagnosis for burnout and saying this is something that needs to be treated, do we see that as an effective reduction of the stigma around saying, I'm experiencing these symptoms, I'm experiencing these things that no, this is a medical diagnosis that needs treatment, as opposed to, maybe you just can't hang, which is just not true. But truly, probably more so what we hear when we don't equate it to a medical issue that we're experiencing. Do you think it reduces stigma to give it that level of, what's the right word? Like not approval, but this is a real thing. This will really hurt people.
Yeah, Ashlyn, I think that it does. I think that it is a step in that direction. Yeah. Because if someone said, I had a heart attack and therefore I need to take time off, or I broke my leg and I have to take time off, we don't think twice about it. What can I do for you? I'll bring you a meal. Right. It is supported in so many different ways, including being supported through the health system and insurance system, right?
Right.
But when we have a system where mental health is treated differently, it is in a different category, and people don't see it as a legitimate reason to take. I mean, think about people teasing and saying, I'm taking a mental health day. Don't tell anyone. Mm-hmm. Right?
That's like shamefully.
Shamefully.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, so I think that there are some downsides, I think, but I think that it being a medical diagnosis, having a status that says that legitimizes it, I think can be helpful.
For sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That giving it that legitimacy, I think, is important. When people can recognize and identify that, okay, so what I am feeling is real, right? This is not something that's made up. Right. It's an actual real thing that I'm experiencing. And I'm not supposed to be experiencing it. I think that's the other aspect of this, right? Because when we begin to have conversations with our colleagues about how we feel, we're feeling really overwhelmed, we're feeling really burned out. And when the response you hear back is, oh, that's normal. That's just the practice of law, right? Yeah. It takes away really for some what it is that you're actually feeling. And so they go back and they say, okay, this I guess is what I'm supposed to feel. So this is just normal. So I'm just going to continue to practice this way versus actually recognizing what it is that they're experiencing and the fact that there is a medical diagnosis out there for it.
Yeah. Normalizing the sickness. And I think gaslighting people into feeling like this is what you're supposed to feel. And this is just part of what you signed up for, suck it up, buttercup. I've got a question for each of you. How many of you know or suspect that you've worked with someone who has experienced severe burnout or some other mental challenge in the practice of law? Like who you've worked with directly? Yes. I mean, I know I have. How about you, Janet?
Absolutely. I can think of every legal environment that I've worked in. And I know that to be true, including when I was a young attorney and it was me. All I had to do was look in the mirror. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have the same response, colleagues, of course, every single legal job that I've had in my career and recognizing it in myself at certain stages as well.
Yeah. And I know Ashlyn and I have both either experienced or worked with folks that have experienced things. I think a related follow-up question is, in those places where you could see and identify that other people or that you yourself were experiencing that, do you think that those folks felt safe to be able to struggle with that? do you think that they felt the safety and the support to be able to be like, hey, I've got a problem, I need help? I can speak from...
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Please.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that the majority, and actually statistics support that the majority of lawyers do not feel safe in saying that do not feel safe in taking time off to manage mental health issues. That was the question that was put to lawyers, and and the majority do not feel safe. And I think that has not changed at all. I think that would have been the answer when I was practicing. There is, I think, a stigma, and even beyond the stigma. And I think that the stigma is changing because we are talking about, we're doing the show, we're talking about mental health openly, much more than we used to. But beyond the stigma, I think that it is just the fear of, what am I going to lose?
Yes.
What is this going to cost me?
Yeah. No, I think
and
that's
the stakes are high for people. The stakes can be very high. And this is not only people who are working in high-paying jobs, people who are doing legal aid, who are getting paid far less than they should be getting paid, who are dealing with trauma, who are experiencing vicarious and secondary trauma because they are dealing with trauma on a regular basis, are some of the people, and I do workshops, I do trainings for people in these populations all the time. And more than anyone, I hear them say, I can't take time off because I don't know what's going to happen to my client. And I really can't rely on anybody else to do it because everybody else is in the same position I'm in.
Yep.
And so it's not that the stakes are so high, I don't want to give up this wonderful, salary that I'm making. It's that people are so committed to the jobs that they're doing, to the clients that they're helping, to the change that they hope that they're making in society, that, and through the legal system, that they really fear that if they get off of that treadmill, that it's going to stop.
Yeah.
And so, we have to, I do think that there's a lack of support. There's a lack of funding for legal aid, for nonprofit legal services. There's so many ways that we need to address this.
Absolutely. I think Janet hit the nail on the head here with talking about some of the structures that we've already identified, right? The legal profession makes us ripe, they say, for burnout when you think about it, whether that's in private practice, whether that's working in government, working in the public sector. Everybody has these situations due to the structure of law that just makes us ripe to go down a path to experience this. When you talk about caseloads, for instance, as Janet already mentioned, right? You talk about working maybe in an environment where you feel like you don't have the support, where you don't feel like you have the resources that you need to do your job, where you have too many cases that you can't keep up with and you start feeling this sense of overwhelm, experiencing the trauma of your clients, just the sheer fact that the justice system is adversarial in nature, right? We're advocating against each other on a regular basis. And so you combine all of these things and you've got the perfect storm and perfect combination.
Yeah, not to mention the added concern about your license, right? I can't let any balls drop. I can't risk someone saying I didn't give it my all or that I didn't give it 100%. I have all these ethical considerations. I have duties to my client. If I take 5 minutes, then I'm going to miss something and at least I am constantly thinking, okay, I just want to make sure I'm checking all of my boxes and doing all the things I need to do because I certainly don't want to be responsible for something not going the way that it's supposed to. And I think, the ethical side of things, the licensing side of things, and the amount that lawyers have to take on to represent their clients for sure can add to that. And I think, like you both pointed out, it's not just the burnout, it's what untreated burnout can lead to, both the physical, the mental. So some of these things that I think are also so important, more statistics. And I think Sam indicated, we'll put these resources in the notes. So if I don't quote them, I'm not making them up, I promise. So lawyers who report feeling a high level of stress are 22 times more prone to suicidal ideation than their low stress counterparts. I mean, that's, about 4.2% of U.S. adults fall into the category of endorsing suicidal thoughts from a clinical perspective. With lawyers, that rate is 8.5%. There's a quote here that says, if you look 5 to 10 years down the road, kind of to your point, the people entering the profession appear to have significantly worse mental health. So we're, how do we say this? Exacerbating the existing problem by creating more problem. It's just, it's scary, and it's scary for, I have a 4-year-old, and she tells people, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I'm like, I don't know, girlfriend. You got a lot of time to figure it out. But man, it's for sure not the most stress-free job we could have selected. And then also, and to the extent, you guys have thoughts on that as well. One of the other issues that you raised is obviously the substance abuse side, and how do we cope if we don't have good coping skills to cope with the stress that we're not treating because we can't talk about it? How are we coping? And I found this interesting article out of Florida, but it says problem drinking among lawyers is 3 times higher than the rate of the general public. And that article was specifically focused on a young lawyer problem, younger lawyers having real problems with drinking. And I think, it's, again, we're not treating the problem. We're not talking about the problem. We're not learning coping skills about the problem. So we're just, all out here making crazy choices, trying to survive. I don't know. What are you guys seeing? Danielle, substance abuse issues on the rise too?
I would say those are probably the issues that we've have identified in the practice for a really long time. Yeah. I think prior to the studies that you had mentioned, we kind of knew it. We just didn't have the numbers yet. And then, 2016, 17 comes along, and we get confirmation on some of those studies that were conducted at that time. But I think it's a real easy, slippery slope if you think about it. I think about when I was in private practice and when I worked for a couple of different other legal departments, just on the days that I was stressed and maybe sometimes I would come home, and what would be the first thing I would say? Oh, I had such a stressful day. Pour me a glass of wine with dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And so you do that, but then for some of us, the next thing you know, you're doing that every single night. And it's a really easy habit to get into when you don't have those coping mechanisms, when you're not identifying why are you turning to the glass of wine at night and what could you be doing differently instead. And not to mention the culture that we just have surrounding drinking itself, firm activities, bar association activities. Those activities are often associated with alcohol. And I'm out here saying, in order to be more inclusive, right, we should be thinking about other ways to incorporate other fun activities. And it doesn't always have to be always so drawn with alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that's, being inclusive for those that are in recovery, but also being inclusive just generally for those who just don't drink. I often joke and I say, I'd rather eat my calories than drink them now. Mm-hmm. And so that's always my response, when people ask me, well, how come you're not drinking? But that's the other aspect of this is, as a culture, we sort of lean to it, right? Mm-hmm. I decide not to drink at a bar association function, and what happens? Like 20 people in the room are like, why aren't you dringing? Well, mm-hmm. Why is it any of your business? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that I think are contributing to this aspect of just what a volume of lawyers we have that are really generally suffering from substance use disorder, and who's seeking help, who's not seeking help, and why are they not seeking help.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm curious, because we've talked, and there's so much more depth that we could go into even beyond what we've covered on how the law is breaking attorneys, but I want to talk a little bit more about non-attorneys or non-legal professionals that the law is breaking as well. And I think substance abuse is a great, kind of segue into that, of when an attorney has, gone from that place of, starting to have a problem to now they're burnt out or they're struggling with their mental health and now they're self-medicating through substance use. That along with all these other things that we've talked about, that has an impact on the people around them. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on, how is the law breaking and how we're approaching it as an industry? How is that breaking people even beyond the direct participants in the legal system?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you said it, Sam. It's very difficult to work in that environment and not be affected by it. And even though lawyers do a lot of their own administrative work and typing and everything themselves, there's still a heavy reliance on support staff. Mm-hmm. And also on paralegals and
right.
People who are other legal professionals. Who I actually coach someone who is the accountant for a law firm. And the stress that she experiences, she's not dealing with the clients. She is not, she's not a lawyer. And so she's not having any face-to-face with the clients or going to court or anything. But the level of stress that she deals with from she works in a couple of different legal environments as an independent contractor. And she's as stressed as any lawyer I know. And it's being in the environment and it's having the pressure. People still have pressures to perform. I like to say, and I think that the legal profession is special, and the statistics tell us that the legal profession is special, and things are happening at a disproportionate level. But most high-performing professionals deal with a lot of the same issues. So we see this across industries. It's just that the legal profession is doing it really, really well right now.
We're very efficient.
The medical profession, it's interesting because it used to be that the doctors were at the top of the charts, and the legal profession is actually starting to exceed what the medical profession is doing in terms of dysfunction, because the medical profession is starting to address it more directly and more aggressively than the legal profession is. Now, having said that, I really do want to give credit to a lot of entities in the legal profession that are trying to do something. Danielle is on the board of I Will, and the ABA is doing a lot. There are a lot of local bar associations that are really, really trying to address this. Almost every bar association is doing some kind of wellness CLE and things like that. And there are efforts, but the problem is so bad that it really is going to take an overhaul of how we approach this to really, really make a difference. But I do want to recognize that efforts are being made and some changes are being made.
No, that's great. And I think it's so important not to lose sight of that. Because the problem can become overwhelming. I mean, just looking at the magnitude. I go back to that story that I shared at the beginning of our conversation on this. And there's a character in there that, I glossed over the first time I read this story because I was focused on the experience of the attorney. And that attorney that went on sabbatical, one of the things that was part of his highlight was his being able to take his daughter to the movies. And I just had to pause as I was thinking about this going, what does that speak about their relationship and their experience that's been created? And it reminded me of my own. My wife commented to me a couple of years ago, or actually it wouldn't have been a couple of years ago, but maybe within about the last year and a half. She was talking about the reaction that our 2-year-old, he's now 2-year-old, has when I come home. And he's just really excited and it's like, Daddy! And he runs to the door. I promise I'm not going to cry on 2 episodes in a row, but even if I did, I wouldn't judge myself for it.
No judgment here.
But my wife said it's just remarkable how some of the changes have impacted the relationship that I have with my kids, because the reaction that my 2-year-old has when I come home is much different than the reaction that our now 6-year-old had when I came home at a similar age. And so much of that is because during those same periods of time, for one of them, I was there much more than for the other. And I think that just speaks volumes too. There's so much of this conversation about how the law is breaking people that I think is tied up in culture. It's tied up in how we design our work. But it also speaks to our choices, and the individual choices that, all of us as participants in the legal industry are making. And I think what I'm so encouraged by is that I see people recognizing and prioritizing that, hey, I see what this is doing. I don't want that, so I'm going to do something different. And that gives me just a ton of hope. I know we're about out of time for today, but does anyone have any kind of last thoughts as far as who the law industry is breaking in terms of its traditional approach and how it's having that impact?
I would only add, because given any opportunity to say things, I will say them, is that I don't think it's serving all of our clients as well as we think it has. And I think the traditional approach that we think, kind of like the point that we made earlier, healthy boundary setting is good for them, and it is good for us, and it is good for the community, and it is good for the industry. And I can't give my best legal mind if I'm spread thin. And if you want the best of me, client, if you want me to be thoughtful and creative and approachable in the way that I can help you solve these problems, I have to get some rest, or I have to pour into my family, or I have to, take the weekend off and I'm not available during the weekend hours. And in my experience, clients are responsive to those boundary setting. They're like, wait, you are a human being who has human needs? Wow, it's shocking. So, but I think, our families, certainly the lawyers and the staff themselves, but I think those people that we are serving are better served when we're whole. And, it's like that saying where you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself so that you can care for anybody else around you. And I think that's true here too, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think there's anybody it doesn't touch.
You're so right. You're so right. And especially in a work, in what we do is sort of a pillar of communities. It's a pillars of not that we're, overstating our own importance here, but, we're talking about really important stuff. So I think you're right. I think it touches everything.
Well, thank you folks for joining us for today's episode. I think we've got a couple closing thoughts, a couple of key points, key practical tips or challenges from today's episode. Janet, Danielle, do you all have any kind of nuggets that you'd like, or tips or challenges that you'd like to share with folks that you hope they'll take away from today's episode?
I'll just throw this out there, given what we talked about today, if a listener feels like they are breaking due to the law and the practice, it's okay to not be okay. I can't stress that enough. And, in the world that I live and work in every single day, we always say that reaching out for help is a sign of strength and not a weakness. And given some of those statistics that were shared today, it's pretty clear that maybe what you're experiencing as an individual, there are others that are right there with you experiencing that, and it's real. And so there are resources available for you if you find yourself in one of those situations where you need some resources, you need counseling, you need advice. And so I just encourage those that feel like they're breaking to reach out to their lawyer's assistance program, to reach out to maybe even finding a clinician on their own, or even a colleague that you feel safe with, having the discussion on maybe how to go about seeking some help. I just highly encourage that you reach out, because we're out here and we're here to help.
Yeah, and I would say really encourage people to, because you're right, Sam, I think that you said it's people make choices. And so do something every day. That thing may be to make that call to your legal lawyer's assistance program. That thing may be to ask a colleague out to lunch because you just really need to talk to someone. That thing may be just to take a moment and breathe, just to close your eyes, go into a quiet space, and feel yourself breathing. Know that you are actually taking air in and letting air out. And it sounds like a very simple thing, but it is something that most of us don't stop in the middle of the day to do. And when we do that, it literally does take us from that fight or flight, if we just allow ourselves to notice the breath for a while, into a calmer state. And if we allow ourselves to do that a couple of times a day, it can make a difference. And so just one thing, that could be your thing. Maybe your thing is not eating lunch at your desk today. I'm going to take it and go someplace else away from my work to eat lunch. One thing every day, do for yourself.
That's great. How about you, Ashlyn?
I love those. Yeah. So one of the things that kind of came to me as we were talking is just the idea that it's okay to have to practice how to care for yourself. And it doesn't come naturally, and we're not necessarily taught it as well early on in our careers as I think we should be, right? I think identifying law schools is a way to teach self-care. Self-care doesn't always look the same for everyone. You see like a self-care bubble bath and then you're going to be healed, and that just isn't going to cut it for me. But it takes practice, and not the thing that you choose one day may not work the next day, but to really lean in and figure out ways that you can grant yourself even just a little bit of care. So put the mask on yourself so that you can get back to the other things that you're pouring into, for sure.
No, that's really good. I think mine for today is be a friend to somebody. There's a lot of people that are hurting, and they're stuck in a place where the problem seems overwhelming and it's too big for them, and they need somebody to come alongside them and help. Take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes, and because those people probably aren't going to feel safe talking to you if they're in an environment that has created that kind of dynamic in the first place. And think about some of these warning signs that folks might be experiencing, and just kind of look through your friend list, look through, the list of attorneys, the list of support staff at your firm, and think, okay, who on this list is exhibiting some of these things? This is a person who's been working an insane number of hours. This is a person who's been dealing with, so much secondhand trauma from so many different things. They've been put in all of these situations. How can I be available to them? How can I help create a safe space for them where they're going to feel like they can take that next step towards health, and be that friend that person needs, be available to them. So that's my thought for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm so grateful that you wanted to be a part of this conversation with us today. Today's episode, we've tried to go in a little bit more depth about how the law is breaking people. I mean, this is such a big topic. It's such an enormous challenge, but it's one that I'm really grateful that we get a chance to share some thoughts on that hopefully will help folks become more aware, become more motivated, and hopefully more hopeful about ways that they can address and tackle this. Please join us on our next episode as we go in more detail about how the traditional approach to the law is broken. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.